You won't right away know how to honor yourself, how to love yourself and do what you love. But it's the exploration of it and getting curious about it. That is the joy of the path.
Welcome to And Then I Did This. Prepare to be inspired as we celebrate the unique journeys of individuals who've had the courage to break free and live life on their own terms. Their lives prove that you truly can be free to live your best and most authentic life. Let's get to it. Welcome to the show. Today I have a special guest, Alana Light, who is the host of Birth the New Earth and so many things. I would love you to introduce yourself and share a little around your background.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I have to I feel like share the story of how we first met for people to understand my background.
Good. Do it.
Because we were steeped in the sales and marketing world. Oh, look, I'm getting a thumbs up. The universe is yes, that is the way to begin. Yes. It's so funny. I remember I was standing in heels, still drinking at the time. It was late night after going to 100 different booths at a conference. And I was so tired of talking. I didn't want to talk anymore. I was so burnt out and exhausted. And this was how many years ago was that? White House? 5, 6? I don't know, something like that. And then I see you. And I know I'm meant to talk to you because you're my client. And when you're talking to clients, you have to be that person who's making your client happy because you're trying to sell something. But you were the opposite energy of every single person. You were just this light. I felt such a deep connection to you, and I felt so much more energy then. But yet I was still so physically tired. And I spent such a number of years being tired in sales and marketing roles for such a long time. Kind of just saying yes when I knew that I should have said no. And I had left really not knowing what I was going to be doing. But I knew that I couldn't go on the way that I was going, because shortly after that, I had gotten this high blood pressure diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Which is insane. So I was all right, I don't want to go on the meds. I want to figure out what I can do for myself naturally, because I got myself into it and I feel like I can get myself out of it. And I learned this thing called positive psychology. I learned to rewire my mind for positivity, which took me on a whole kind of journey of where I ended up lowering my blood pressure with my mind. I ended up teaching folks how to do that at workshops, all these different things. Whole awesome experiences, only to at some point realize that there was a bigger mission that I needed to take part in, and that all those things that I learned landed me where I am right now, which is doing this podcast, because I just keep coming across the same conversation over and over again, no matter what I do, that everyone is still living in this place of fear, and everyone's still going around super anxious and not knowing what's going on in the world, and feeling everything's really crumbling. Yeah. And not really understanding what to do next, but wanting a way forward. And I'm that kind of person who's okay, I understand now from all that I've learned that we are manifesting the reality that we're living in. If that means that we are doing that, that means that we can ask ourselves, what kind of earth do we want to live in? We can unite and we can consciously get together to roll up our sleeves and actually co-create all of the systems that we see that are crumbling, right? So it's everything, the corporate system, the education system, the healthcare system, the food system. I mean, the list goes on. How do we create peace? How do we create a new kind of government? Everything that actually can serve us, because we can do that when we remember that we are manifestors of this earth. And so this is what my work has led me to. And these are the conversations that I'm having now globally as often as possible to bring people together who are starting to create these new systems. And that's what brought me back to you, because I saw you, and it didn't surprise me when after all those years that we had met, burnt out and exhausted, and seeing you as the light, that you were already creating that same kind of a shift for not only yourself, but others, right? Here you were deciding, you know what, I can no longer say yes to things that I want to say no to. I have found my truth. I know everything that brings me passion and joy, and I am now creating a new way forward for me and for others. So thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to begin this chat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think at the point that you realize you're sedating your soul by continuing doing work that you're not meant to be doing, you
Yes.
need to get out. All of us have an expiration date. And if we go too far beyond that date,
Yes.
then our health starts to suffer. I mean, I wound up
Yes.
going out on short-term disability. I got a cut on my thumb, got an infection that traveled to my wrist. I was at the gym and realized, that I had a cut. So I just, licked the cut,
Right.
rubbed it on my yoga pants, whatever, and kept going. And it literally traveled through my whole body. And I wound up having drip IV antibiotics. And then I had to go out on short-term disability. I had never been out on short-term disability other than having my daughters. That was it. And had wound up having surgery on one of my wrists because tendon tears from the antibiotics caused me to not be able. Exactly. So I call that the universe putting an exclamation point on your time is up, time to get out.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it took 8 months after I had gone back, decided I just couldn't do it anymore. And I took 8 months and stayed in New York. I was right by Central Park, living right by a yoga studio. So I went to the park every day, fed the birds, did yoga, and then decided, okay, where do I really feel like I need to go closer back to family? So I get back to the West Coast, and then the rest is history. So yeah, you can be free. I am on a mission to help people realize you can be free. You don't have to stay somewhere doing something you're not meant to do.
100%. 100%.
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard because once you cross over to the other side and you're kind of just like now a witness to what it is that you used to say yes to when really you should have said no, it becomes, so easy for you to understand kind of physically when you are starting to do something that, again, isn't aligned with your truth. So like, if you're not paying attention to that, your body at some point is literally going to get cues from the universe who's saying, push her over, and at that point, you now are someone that is so in your power and you're going off of your soul, as you had said before. It is your truth. It is what you're meant to be here. It is your purpose. It is your mission. It's who you were before. It's who you'll be after. So why not be it now? And I feel like we're so aligned because now we look back as that impartial observer of everyone else that doesn't yet know it. And you want so much for everyone else. You almost want to shake everyone and be like, guys, like there's this whole other way. You don't have to be like heads down, in a rat race, acquiring all the things, bigger, better, more, greater position, promotion, money, all the things that once you get all those things, you just realize that wasn't the thing that would make me happy.
And it just ties you more to that, to realize you can stop drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes.
You don't have to unpack anything or any of the performance reviews. And I look at them now. I literally kept one of the last performance reviews only so I could see the language that we use. Like, did you exceed what I expected of you? Or did you just meet it? Or were you below what I expected of you? I mean, would we talk that way to each other in any other kind of relationship? Why do we accept that in work environments?
That's such a good, like, why couldn't we say, were you curious?
Yes. Or what did you contribute?
Yeah. Like, did you have a failure? And then if so, what did you learn?
Yes. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Like, did you do something outside of your role?
Right.
I had so many different roles in the corporate world because I never stayed inside my one role.
Right.
I would always come in and I would come up with some new product idea, some go-to-market strategy. And everyone in those roles would get upset because they saw that as a threat. But what that does is that keeps you in one box.
Right. Right.
And if you're staying in one box and you could never expand and you can, and the key to innovation is comparing and contrasting like multiple disciplines to be able to come up with something that's never been thought of before. So how can we ask for creativity when everyone has to stay in the box? And the only thing you can ever do is excel in your box.
Right. Right. Exactly. And we could have, did you help others?
Right.
Did you contribute? Who did you help this year? Who did you support outside of your role?
Yeah.
Just simple
Yeah.
things that are
Yeah.
so much more humane.
Yes.
But our current structures are just not conducive of the human spirit.
No, no. And that's why they're crumbling. Yeah. And that's what's happening. Like I had just done a podcast. I know I talked to you about that before you hit record, where I have someone who is leading the charge in AI. And he was saying how, okay, yes, people are afraid because they feel like their jobs are going to be taken over.
Right.
And that is going to happen, right? Large corporate structures are certainly going to shrink. But what that means is, so now when you're leaving, because you're forced to leave, and I think that we're going to have that in really large numbers really soon. I think the norm is going to be stories of how I got laid off. That will be the normal thing.
Wow.
People are going to still try to go back to LinkedIn and look for their regular job. Their regular job will no longer be there. But what that is forcing people to actually do is do that thing that we were talking about before, which is ask ourselves, what do we love to do? Like, what have we always wanted to create? Because what that now means is that if you can figure that out, and I know like our generation is like, what? Like, what do I love? Because that was programmed out of us when we were kids. And that's the root of the issue. So once you can figure out what you love, which takes some work, it took me some work as well. And the way I first figured it out was by figuring out, like when my body told me when I was doing something that I don't love.
Right.
Like I started to get, I was like, all right, that's not right. Right. Finally start to figure out what you love. Are you brave enough to do it? Because we're so entrained to be afraid to fail, right? We're so entrained in like a fear-based survival mechanism. But once you figure that out, and I think that's the name of the game and the fun of it, you can now, or like say you notice a hole in the market, something that you can solve for that excites you. You can now create a company easily with AI, with zero funding and zero people, and have a go-to-market strategy, know who to market to, create the product itself, build the website. You can literally have it coded for you if you know how to prompt. All of that can be created for you easily. Know who your market segmentation is, your demographics, what to say to them, when, across what platforms. All of that, instead of needing 20 to 30 people and $20 to $30 million in funding, every single person now can be a solopreneur.
Right.
And that is what is happening. And that's why it's super, super exciting. So we have to actually be okay with remembering who we are and getting back to our humanity. And that's why the corporate structure way of being that has proliferated, removing that from us, which is what school did at the get-go, no longer works.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. At the indoctrination camps, as they're called.
That's essentially it. Like we had said before, the one thing that AI would never have access to is higher consciousness.
Absolutely.
Right? It has no access to cool, innovative ideas. Right? It has no access to imagination, to intuition. Right? It needs us for that. We have to feed it. The art of it is learning to coexist with it and get deeper into that thing that was removed from us when we were kids.
Yeah. And leverage AI as a tool.
100%. 100%. Coexist with it. Don't be afraid of it. Get curious about it. You will be blown away. I can't believe how much I can do because I work with ChatGPT constantly. I can produce so much more. And it's amazing. Like everyone can be able to do that, but we have to be okay with exploring, experimenting, getting curious.
Exactly. So what would you say, like people who haven't had the high blood pressure, or in my case, gone out on short-term disability because of ravaging your body?
Yeah.
What tips or advice would you give people to connect with themselves to start to get real about what's going on in their life?
The first thing to do is to ask yourself why you said yes to your career or your role in the first place. Because I think a lot of folks would be like, well, my parents thought it would be a good idea.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Or, I wanted to move out as soon as possible. That for me, it was kind of a combination of the two. I didn't feel safe in the home that I grew up in. And I was like, if I make as much money as possible and create a life that looked totally different than the one that I grew up in, I would feel safe and be happy. And I did that, but it didn't work. right? So to actually get real about what your intention is, because we have to start really asking ourselves, are we really fired up? Are we filling our cups with what it is that we are doing? Or are we just doing it because we feel like we're supposed to, because we feel like it ticks a box, because we feel like it's about the optics, because it's attached to an identity that we want other people to believe about us. And I think that that's where kind of the shift is occurring, where you're starting to see folks no longer want that old way of being because they're not feeling joy and they are feeling burnt out because they created the life and it's not giving them that satisfaction, but they don't quite know what to do about it.
Right.
You know, so once you start to realize that you're at that inflection point, that's where it gets really fun.
Yeah. And people feeling brave enough to do it. It's like those sayings of, if you realize you're in the wrong room, take steps to get out. Then I saw one the other day that was like, if you realize you're on the wrong train, the longer you stay on it, the more expensive the trip,
100%.
Right?
This is so well said. And so it is not easy to step into a new way of being because you're used to money. You're used to having achievement attached to your identity. It needs to get to the point where your joy is actually more important than having the second car.
Right.
And that's what I needed to do. I needed to be like, okay, where can I actually cut corners to press pause long enough where I feel really comfortable and have zero pressure whatsoever so that I can actually take the shortest journey ever, which is the one inside, but the one that most people will never, ever take because they're looking for all of those things on the outside.
Right.
You have to be able to get rid of those things on the outside that you're willing to part with to slow down enough if you don't want to right away start trying to make extra income while you're still doing the other thing, right? Because I tried that too, and I still wasn't being honest with who I really was. So like I needed to get rid of the second car, stop going out to eat. I stopped dyeing my hair. I stopped getting Botox. I stopped having a cleaner, the fancy vacations, all of the extras. And my friends at the time, when I told them that I was doing this, because I was type A acquisition oriented. Like if I showed you a picture of me, I looked like I was made of plastic. They were like, you're not going to be able to do that. Like that is hard, to do. And I felt like I couldn't keep going on the way that I was going. So I had no choice but to do that because I had gotten a taste of what it was like to go within.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I had gotten that feeling of what bliss was like, regardless of what was happening on the outside.
Right.
And it was so powerful that it lowered my blood pressure, that it got me back into the present moment. It created a relationship with my kids that I had never had when I was always traveling or running and thinking about the future. Like that shit. Like I remember the first time I was sitting at the kitchen table. I was about to start like future planning again. Like, what am I going to say in my next meeting? What am I going to wear next week to Chicago? Like while I'm eating with my family, it was normal to do that.
Right.
And I remember the first time I was like, wow, I could get right back into this moment. Like that awareness.
Yeah.
Put me right in bliss. And all of a sudden, like I could hear the sounds of my kids' voices.
Wow.
Which I don't think I really heard for a long time.
Yeah.
Everything shifted then for me. And I knew I had to get more of that. And I didn't care what it took.
Yeah.
I didn't care what it took.
Yeah.
And like now, like what's insane, the aha joke of the whole thing is like, when you're living in that energy and you start just creating from that space and you don't care about the things that are going to come from it, all of a sudden, because that's equal to abundance, that's the energy that is equal to abundance.
Exactly.
Quick and dirty rule that is so simple of like, well, how do we manifest? What is the law of attraction? You just need to be equal to the energy of what it is that you want to attract.
Exactly.
Everything starts flowing to you then.
Yep.
But by then you're so heads down in flow state. You're so heads down and just like doing what you love. You don't even care about those things. Like I could buy all those things I just told you about. I could buy them all right now. And I don't.
Yeah.
because I don't even care about them.
Exactly. Your priorities shift. Your priorities shift.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I care more about connection or
Yeah.
creativity, like getting a cool idea, like watching the wind in between the trees. That beauty of life is so cool. Do we see it?
Yeah. 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 No, I hear you on every front because I'm just thinking the Botox with even like my daughter launched an organic skincare line. So it was like, I make my own and she'll make oils our own. I don't buy any.
Right.
I stopped the Botox, stopped any of that stuff. She was like, you realize you're injecting poison into your face is going to your brain. And I hadn't even made that connection. Like, oh, wow, it's right there. There's a blood-brain barrier, but why would you inject poison?
Yeah, why would we? Yeah, just to freeze ourselves?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so there are just so many ahas that, I mean, it's taking me back to even me remembering when my daughters was younger, driving in the car, taking calls. We're going shopping for her, but I'm so distracted and so prioritizing work. I'm on a work call while we're walking into the mall to buy her some new clothes for spring or, and her bringing my attention to that.
So I did that all the time. We'd go to Disney and I'd book calls. I'd be like, I have to be back at the room for this call. Yeah. Like so
programmed. We were just programmed
and
like
that was
robots.
normal. And it was like, I couldn't 100% ever relax. And I was making myself sick. And what's really funny is like, I now feel beautiful from the inside out, which I used to never say. I would never say that. Like, oh, that I feel beautiful. Because we're not even like, even though we do all these things and pump ourselves with these toxins, we never even say because we're wearing a mask. But I feel from the inside out a light, right? Which makes me feel more beautiful than when I looked even 10 years ago, where I felt like I looked so much older.
Right.
I don't know. I looked like I had a mask on. And everything I did, the call at Disney, being late, I would show up hungover even to like my kids' like events. I was out late with clients like that. It was always the priority.
Right.
But all to keep that armor of perfection like perfectly affixed.
Oh my gosh.
Until it got too heavy.
Yeah. Well, and I think something you said earlier also made me remember I took an intuitive healing class from a friend. Yes. She's from Brazil. And she had talked in one of the lessons around the universe will give us and our higher self will give us whispers. You're going the wrong direction. You're doing too much. You're not in alignment. And then if you don't listen to the whispers, it becomes a shout. It becomes a scream because your soul is crying out. You need to change direction. You cannot, and that's where people will get heart attacks or die, because they've worked themselves to death. I mean, what a horrible saying. Yeah, they're working themselves to death.
And that's what they do. Yeah. And that's why everyone can't wait to retire. And I sit around my girlfriends who are the same age as me, like my college girlfriends, and we see each other like once or twice a year. And they all just go around talking about how they can't wait for it to end. And then it gets to me and I'm like, should I say how excited I am? And like, I'm reborn. And like, I just like never want to stop working because I love what I do. Like, I don't believe in retirement because it's that program again. Because then once you stop your body, like look at Bruce Lipton, epigenetics. So I think we talked about that. Now you told your body that you don't need it anymore because you don't have to do anything. You have no purpose. That's where you see people getting cancer when they retire or they get, like a heart attack. Like people will die when they retire.
Exactly.
Like if you need less, that means you can do less of the things that you don't want to do. Right. But that means you can be more of who you are. And that's more of your truth. And what that means is like, you could be that forever.
Exactly.
Your body would listen to that. And your body be like, wait a second, at age 100, you are still purpose-driven. You are still enjoying what you're doing. You're going around globally. You're giving talks. You're getting people together, meditate, whatever it is that you're doing. I see myself walking in a robe, like barefoot. I don't know. I see many different things. But the body's like, well, I've got to create like a body of longevity to support this way of being because it seems like we're going to be here for quite some time and we can be.
Yes,
That's how we get out of this sick care system.
exactly. Completely. Well, that's why I say the word retire. I add a D, retired meant. Because people are tired. Like that by the time they've done something they
That's
don't
so
like
good.
doing
Yes,
for
yes,
30, 40 years,
yes.
they're just tired. Like, I'm just done. And then that's when they expire because
Yes.
they have nothing. I have a good friend in New York that I'll talk to often and every week, and just so envious of me because I'm just like continuing on, like have all these things like to do. The next thing that's on the
You can't wait to do that. Exactly. Exactly.
not
Like you asked me like what I'm doing the rest of my day. And I'm like, I'm going to have an easy day, but like there's 7 more things I want to do, which sounds crazy, but like I can't wait to do them. And that's the bar. When you asked me before, like, how do you get started like this? If it's not fun and I don't freaking love it and I can't wait to do it and I don't have like a fire in me of want to do it, you don't do it.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like getting together with you. I have been looking forward to this all week. And like I knew last night going to sleep, that's yay, we're doing this today. And it's like, if I was doing that old stuff that I was doing, even at a startup for a period of time, was like lucked into, I shouldn't say lucked into, was wise enough, smart enough, whatever, inspirational enough for, someone to fund $250,000 to start this company, but it wasn't what I was meant to be doing. So COVID saved me and just allowed me to, okay, slow down. What do you really want to be doing?
Right. Right.
And then I thought, I want to help people break free from the system.
I love that.
Be free, but to move off grid, be free to leave your job and become some other thing that you wanted to do when you were a kid.
Yes. Yes. Go all the way back. And that's like in the education system now, like education reform needs to look like keeping a kid throughout your entire life, expanding on imagination, saying, what are all the things that you're really interested in? Let's explore all of those different disciplines, right? Let's compare and contrast them. Let's align with AI to create them into this matter, into the form. It can't be memorization of stuff that's already like available on ChatGPT. No one's hiring for knowledge anymore. Like it can't be that like at age 50 we have to try to remember what we love. Like
it's like, or sit still, don't move. You can't go to the bathroom. Raise your hand. It's like, are you kidding me? These little kids want to be up and moving and doing stuff.
Yeah, and like everything changes when you get into that energy. Like at some point for me, I was like, wow. I'm doing like daily meditation and I'm breathing and I'm honoring myself. I'm slowing down. I actually feel really good. And like when I take in a toxin like alcohol, it doesn't align with me anymore. It doesn't feel good. For years, I drank. For many, many years, I drank for my job. Then I got to the point where I'm like, wow, I realized that the fruits and the vegetables that I'm getting in the supermarket are shit. Right. And I'm paying a lot of money for things that are meant to be organic. But meanwhile, they've been on the shelf for a week. By the time they get to me, God knows how much less nutrients there are. You start to get so in tune to honoring yourself. We now have like an indoor hydroponic garden. I'm like, why don't we grow our own food? Why don't we take back, like you say, off grid? Let's seriously take back every single system that's not working for us anymore. And all of a sudden, like you don't want to spend $350 to go out to dinner because you realize you're buying more toxins. It's all like salt and butter. And all of a sudden, cooking at home feels like nurturing.
Absolutely.
Like it feels good, and then you get to sit down. This is such an old concept that we forgot. It became weird with our children and actually eat with them regularly. Like
what a novel concept.
These simple things that were so, at some point we're like, oh, we'll slow down later. And I remember when I got that diagnosis, that was now 7 years ago. So at the time I was 40, I couldn't believe I got the diagnosis. And the doctor was like, you're burnt out. And I was like, Like, I didn't even know. I didn't even know. Because I had tightness on my chest for years and ignored it.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like I couldn't get a breath in for years. And that was normal.
Right.
So he was like, you need to slow down. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that later. He's like, well, when's that going to be? When I retire, right?
Oh my God.
When I can slow down to be with my kids who don't want to be with me then.
Right.
That's
why I say we're human beings, not human doings.
Yes. Yeah, that is so good. Yes.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like we've covered so much, and thank you of like where my purpose work has taken me. And I love what you said before, that you felt like first you found what you were doing and it was the right thing and you realized it wasn't. Like, it's the same for me. Like, started teaching positive psychology, but was doing it in my own energy of like the old way of like pushing. And I was like, I'll teach in corporate and I'll teach in schools because that'll make the most money the quickest. And you won't right away know who you are. Unfortunately, you won't right away know how to honor yourself, how to love yourself and do what you love. But it's the exploration of it and getting curious about it. Exactly. That is the joy of the path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what final words of advice would you have for someone to encourage them to get started?
Oh, it's so good to really take a moment and ask yourself, what do you really want to change in this world? Because I know so many people are angry about so many different things, which is kind of how we started this conversation. And everyone says that they're not going to be happy until those things change. But know that whatever it is that you want to change on the outside is a reflection of what it is that you want to change on the inside first. Because that's the only way to change the outside.
Right.
So to allow yourself to get honest enough with how it might be really hard to turn that within, that which you want to fix on the outside, actually turn it within and start to go deep and to allow yourself to remove those layers that you might have had for a really long time that are causing you to be angry with all the things on the outside, because underneath all of those layers and all of that pain is your truth.
So good. So good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On the show.
Awesome. Now you're going to be on my show.
Yes. Yes.
That'll be
all right. That'll be next.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on another episode of And Then I Did This, celebrating the lives of those who've walked away from the beaten path to pursue work and a life that nourishes their soul. If you're feeling inspired and ready to explore your own path to freedom, check out youcanbefree.life, where you'll find resources and support to help you break free and live life on your own terms. See you next time.